I'm Zach Weiss, co-founder of Worn and Wound, and this is the 2020 Virtual Windup Watch Fair. Today we're chatting with Jonathan Ferrer, founder of Brew Watch Company, about their latest release, the Retromatic. We dig into Jonathan's design process and why he chose to use two different mechanical movements in his new line. Here's our interview with Jonathan. Hi everyone, and welcome to the Virtual Windup Watch Fair. I'm joined today by Jonathan Ferrer of Brew Watches. Thank you for joining us, Jonathan.
Thank you for having me, Zach. Happy to be here.
I know, our pleasure, our pleasure. For anyone who's not familiar with Brew Watches, can you just tell us about your brand?
Yeah. So now we're going on almost 6 years. Can you believe that? 6 years, and it all kind of cultivated or began in the coffee shop. So hence the name Brew. I was designing and working on watches in different cafes in the city. And that was my studio, so to speak. I wasn't here. I was in the cafe all hours of the day. And I said to myself, if there was some way to correlate your time over coffee with a watch in some poetic, fun way, that could be something special. And then, lo and behold, these years later, it's cultivated into a brand called Brew.
Excellent, excellent. And obviously you take inspiration from the world of coffee in other ways as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So when you look at watches in general, everybody has their own specific category. And rather than following into a channel of an existing genre, I pose an idea of what would a new genre look like that I could connect to, but more importantly than just me, that other people could connect to. And I said, how simple enjoying a cup of coffee, not the literal coffee, but that attraction of going out, the escape, the date, the meeting with colleagues, the creative moments. If I could wrap a circle around that time-wise, then that could be a unique new genre, so to speak.
Very cool, and it's clearly been successful because 6 years later you're here, and we're about to talk about a really cool new release. So you're about to launch the Retromatic. Can you tell us a little bit about this watch, the inspiration, and what brought you to it?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a learning curve with any brand, any company, where you're learning about your own successes and your own drives. And for me, with Brew, it's always been about personal passion. I love to design, but I also love the philosophy over your time with coffee. So my latest watch before this was the Retrograph. Simple chrono, but it had specific timing measures on it that would allow you to see when the perfect shot of espresso was made. It's between that 20 to 35 second marker. The new watch now is similar in the design family where it's a cushion style case, but I've looked closer at the machines, and this was more of a luxury aesthetic focus where I took the drain grates and the vented cutouts of the machines and literally pulled them and imposed that onto the dial, the crown, and the case back in a way it's beautiful if you don't know, but if you ask, it's those, I don't even know what you would call it. If you ask, there's a reason for every detail.
That's great. And can you just tell us a little bit about the overall size and shape of the design?
Yes. So the size of the new Retromatic is 39 millimeters tall. Width is 36. So very compact. And the reasoning for that, every brand has their own philosophy and thoughts on the industry and watches. My own personal thoughts are, I enjoy compact watches. I like vintage watches. They're more wearable. I mean, if it can fit under your sleeve, it's casual. And I don't think it should be too obtrusive. Yet, making square watches just to begin with, it takes a lot of surface area on your wrist. It's typically larger than your regular round watch, around 38 millimeter, and then a square 38 millimeter, where completely different. And you guys are so aware of that. So making this 36 by 39 was a challenge of making this as compact and wearable as possible.
What you said about the size and the shape is very true. And I got the pleasure of trying on the Retromatic just the other day. And to your credit, it is designed to fit the wrist very well. And I was very impressed by the wrist. The presence, just the way it sat on my wrist. And I have a pretty average 7-inch wrist, so I feel like I'm a decent gauge for if something feels small or big, et cetera. And it felt just right. It is downscaled, though, from the retrograph. Is that correct?
Exactly. So the retrograph is 41.5 tall, where the new watch is 39. So slightly more compact. And then the retrograph chronograph prior to this was, I believe, it was 38 side by side, 38, and the new one is 36. So it is, on paper it's subtle, but on the wrist it's pretty significant.
Do you see customers of the retrograph also getting the Retromatic?
Oh yeah, so that was the challenge. I give a big yes to that, and the hopes are when you design a new watch, you never want to ignore your current audience. You don't want to make something that's too shallow of a jump or too subtle of a move where it's just like, well, it's a Rolex. You went from black to silver, and we've seen it already done already. I know what that feels like. This, I wanted it to be special and significant enough, but still falls into the same design family, so it makes sense. And so my hopes and expectations are my current audience that has one or multiple Brew watches would feel inclined to try this out and of course, be an owner of this as well.
In the name of the watch, I think you reveal something very important, which is that it is an automatic. So you've gone back to mechanical movements here. Can you tell us a little bit about that decision?
Yeah. So this is an interesting one, and you've already pointed it out. Watch. This is going to be very interesting. So I didn't produce a lot of these watches. So I produced 500, and by the time it actually reaches market, it'll be less than that. Because I'm going to want to hold some, and then my close members or even family are going to say, I want one before it even goes live. And I'll say, hey guys. But by the time it reaches market, I'm only doing technically 200 pieces as a Swiss auto, and then 300 pieces as a Seiko auto. So now you have two different movements. End goal, yes, they are both automatic watches, both robust automatic watches, but there's a significant difference in origin and then price point. My main mission as a designer and a designer for Brew is to make watches that are accessible, that don't break the bank. If you like it, you can wear it and enjoy it and don't feel intimidated by the price. So the price points that I'm going with this, that's a big eye opener for anyone that knows watches and specs and prices, is for the Solita to be at $495, which is already unheard of. So $495 for a Solita on a stainless steel bracelet. We'll get to the bracelet. I love the bracelet. And that was a challenge. So $495 for the Solita, and then $425. You think about the design more than the price, I'll tell you. Then $425 for the Seiko. And I say the same end result because I chose movements and the build of the watch to be pieces that are going to essentially last just as long as us and more. I mean, these are watches that naturally any watch you have to be careful with. Impact, magnetism, you name it, you have to be aware of it. But overall build of these watches are going to be so substantial that these are watches that can be worn every day, and you don't have to be too careful with them. So that was the basis of why I chose these specific movements, as well as attainability on both parts.
And so this is also your first time using a Swiss-made movement, is that correct? Or at least automatic?
Yes. So my experience with Swiss movements, specifically Solita, the one I'm using now, it's the SW200, has been through other brands, through speaking with the manufacturers, and reading as much as I can on them. For the most part, you hear absolutely fantastic things. If you dig really deep, you're always going to hear good, bad, and the other. But for the most part, I've only heard success stories and good long-term wearability with this movement specifically.
Yeah, it's a great choice, and it's very exciting to see you expand into that like, higher end if you wish to continue to pursue that. So it's a really cool direction for you. Since you mentioned it, would you could you tell us a little bit about the bracelet and the challenges in that design?
Yeah. So bracelets, I learned a lot this specific design round because my initial phases were originally the design mission was design a watch that was reminiscent of 60s, 70s, and even 80s watches. Like that was my time range that I wanted to watch to emulate. So I chose to go with the flat link brushed steel bracelet. I chose it for a couple reasons. One, of course, time period, it makes sense. Two, comfort. If you can get this bracelet made correctly, it'll be very comfortable across your wrist. The first pieces I had made were over 3 millimeters thick. Um, when I'm looking at it on paper and 3D prints, it was proportionally acceptable. But when I actually produced it in the metal, I said, holy moly, this bracelet's too thick and chunky. It doesn't actually curl across your wrist correctly. And then you have to go further. Well, that's my wrist. What happens if somebody has a smaller wrist? Then it has to curl even tighter. And then you've really pushed out a segment of the market. I always try to stay as flexible, not just on price point, but wearability. So I tailored it down to 2.5, and that's the slimmest I would go because any slimmer will feel loose. It's going to feel like a date just on a Jubilee bracelet. It's going to feel like loose change. It has to be tight, and it still needs to be comfortable. So 2.5 millimeters was the proper thickness, and it needs to be tapered. Nothing feels more designed or thought about than a tapered bracelet. So I go from 20 millimeter lug width down to 16 with a butterfly deployant buckle, and that way it's all cohesive and flush fit, feels like finished correctly.
Mm-hmm. No, it's, I like that you put that much thought into it. I remember, once again, from trying it on that it felt very nice, and I personally am a fan of a more severe taper, so a 4 millimeter taper felt right to me. So once again, job well done on that. The colors that you chose for the watch obviously are very significant and quite beautiful. So there's a green, a blue, and a reddish color. Can you tell us about those three colors and how you arrived at them?
Yes, so I was thinking about, again, wearability, where we've been in the past, what was successful, what people wanted, and overall what I would enjoy, because I have like this personal philosophy I've developed over time, and I blame Max Booster from MBNF, which is if you don't excite yourself, then others won't feel the same excitement as well. And so I did a couple of curveballs, which was one, the burgundy, this deep red. That was something through different images I've seen through espresso machines, vintage watches. That's another thing. As a watch designer, or anybody in this field, and you can definitely tell me your thoughts on this. When you're looking for inspiration, I think the worst funnel, it's very difficult to get inspiration from other watches because then you start developing other watches. So when I look at colors, I was looking at different espresso machines, specifically machines that had these covers on them. So every espresso machine is essentially a boiler with a housing that goes around it. But if you ever have the time to search a quick La Marzocco custom machines, you see these beautiful baby blues and these greens and these burgundies. And I saw this one machine, this beautiful burgundy color. And I said, that was really something special. Now, there's two things that immediately, it's a chain of events. Will men wear this? Will females wear this? Will this be a unisex style? Because for me, it's an experience. Who's going to wear this all the time? I know I will. It's super cool. It's different. Quick shout out to Ferrer. They've also done like their own burgundy with the sunray. Beautiful watch. I could see anyone wearing that. Men, females, young, old. It's different. It's fun. It's flavorful, and it's unique to them. That was the same thought. It was through my book of inspiration that I found colorways that I said, I haven't done this before with the burgundy and the green, that I wanted to give it a shot. Not only that, there was one further thought was, when I release this, what time of the year will it be? Not that I want to ever be fast fashion, because these watches should live forever, not just in the fall, but the summer, the spring. But I said, when I release these are going to be late October, early November. We're talking like the middle of fall and autumn. Wouldn't these be very nice colors? I'm thinking photography and actually going outside, this deep burgundy, this deep olive green, this pop of yellow. I think those would be really nice colors, just even seasonally. So these are all again, very personal thoughts, but there's a rhyme and reason for every decision made.
I've always appreciated that you come from a design background and that your experiences go beyond just that of watches and the watches you collect. And I think it's a smart approach, particularly given that you're tying your product to a greater kind of culture. So it makes sense to draw from the colors in that culture. And to the effect is great. You've always had a great palette and continues with the Retromatic. So congratulations on that. And congratulations on the Retromatic launch. It's very exciting, and we're very happy to have it as part of the Virtual Windup Watch Fair.
Thank you for always supporting, giving me your unsolicited, honest thoughts. It does mean a lot, and from many years ago till today, very much appreciated, Zach.
Thank you for saying that. I remember seeing your watches way back in the early days because we knew each other through mutual design connections. So it's been really great to see your brand grow. And I guess one last question just to tie it off. Are there any future plans that you have that you would like to share, or anything else that you would just like to add?
I will say, right now I'm working on buttoning up the entire experience. So going beyond the watch to the instructions and the packaging, and I still ship each individual watch after I give it a final quality control inspection. I just want every person to realize that a lot goes into not just the design and execution of the watch, but the final delivery. So not to have high expectations, but you can have a good reassurance that the final delivery and acceptance of these watches, I will do my very, very best to ensure that it's like the very best unboxing watch experience that is possible, not just from a brand, but beyond what I've done in the past, trying to continue to elevate each stage along the way.
Excellent. That's very exciting. I look forward to seeing the packaging. Thank you so much, Jonathan, and thank you for joining us. And we'll be seeing you soon, hopefully.